We're Amy and Christina, two moms who learned the hard way that there's a lot we wish we knew about pregnancy and parenting.
So now we're asking experts all the questions, sharing what we've learned and what we're still figuring out, and keeping it real along the way. Welcome to What I Wish I Knew.
Christina, remember when we thought that having it all meant crushing it at work, having multiple adorable kids who all wore matching outfits, getting tons of quality time with our husband, plus obviously enjoying ample leisure activities like workout classes and wine nights with our girlies?
Right? And then life was like, that's cute. Nope. Turns out society tells us that success looks one way, but for women, and particularly moms, it can look totally different. So, how do we even figure out what version of quote unquote having it all is right for us?
We spoke with Corinne Low, who's an economist, an author, and a mom of two, about just that. She walked us through the economics of finding happiness, which is a lot more interesting than it sounds. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Well, Corinne, welcome to What I Wish I Knew.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. We are. We've talked so much on this podcast about obviously parenting, kids, women's health as it relates to having kids because they beat up your body and your mind in many ways. So we're psyched to talk to you because we're talking about, I think, women's health a little bit more broadly, I guess, because it affects all kinds of aspects of your life, of like the idea of having it all as a woman and as a parent. So I did want to start off, you have a book coming out, which we read and loved. And this quote in particular that I'm going to start the conversation off with was just one that, I don't know, just felt like it was like, which is, you deserve to have it all, not the perfectionist, unattainable version of balance defined by society, but the version that feels right for you. There's so much to unpack there. What made you want to talk about this idea of having it all?
Well, I start the book in the midst of what I describe as my midlife crisis, which is that I was in the muck. I was in the thick of it. I had a newborn at home. I was commuting 2.5 hours to my tenure track faculty job in Philadelphia. I became the sole breadwinner. And I was doing the majority of the, home production, childcare, all of it. And I felt like I was failing at everything. And I say, not only did I not feel like I had it all, I felt like I didn't have anything, right? Like nothing, the way that I had envisioned my life, it was not coming to fruition. And it made me question everything because I think as a feminist and as a big believer in like women can be equal to men, like I always thought that if I just wanted it enough, that I could be an equal to a man, not just in the office, but in a family as well, right? And then the reality of that hit me like a ton of bricks of, wow, like my male colleagues have a different life because their wives are the ones doing what I'm doing at home. And I therefore need to really change my expectations and change my definition of success, or I am going to feel like I'm failing all the time.
And that comes all the POV, like that intro you just gave, all of that then is also rooted in your background as an economist and like how you're actually approaching this concept from not just like an emotional or personal perspective, but also with the lens of an economist, which is super unique. I mean, I can't tell you I've ever heard that talked about on social media and like, in parent groups of like, well, let's talk about the economics of it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I have studied these issues for a long time and before really I was living some of these issues. So I was always interested in understanding the economic lives of women. And I saw that this was something that was underrepresented in my field that I did my PhD in economics. And so in grad school, I wrote about women's fertility and how it's time limited. And I coined the term reproductive capital to talk about the sort of value that we bring to the table of our sacred ability to create life and how that shapes our decision making because it's a depreciating asset that we have to kind of figure out how to optimize with other assets we might be interested in, like financial capital or like our human capital. So, and I wrote that as like a smug, late 20s, smugly fertile late 20s year old, who like thought that, I was going to be able to navigate these issues because I knew the data, I knew the research, I knew the science, right? And then I came to find out that like it doesn't matter how much you know and how much you kind of know how things should be or what they should look like. The reality is going to still be there of those deep structural problems that we have in society. And so then I started diving into that in my research of trying to like understand and make visible those things that I was experiencing in my own life. And when I started uncovering some of these data points that made me feel so seen, I was like, I have to tell people about that. And this is where the book came from, because like in the data, it shows that women who are primary breadwinners still do twice as much cooking and cleaning as their lower earning male spouse. So like it wasn't just me, it wasn't just my relationship. It is a reality that's there in the data. And it's something that we as like a society at large need to solve, instead of like women being the battering ram, just positioning ourselves as like, I've got to physically break through these barriers myself.
So once you started figuring this out, Corinne, like how did finding out these data points impact then your personal life? Because it's so intricately linked. Like you find this
I
out and you
think
go home and you're like,
Yeah, and I ended up getting divorced, and that story's in the book. So yeah, so it's like I was like, yeah, I went home and had fights, right, to feel like I was trying to claw back that sense of equality. And no, I'm not advocating getting divorced as the solution, for most people's, relationships or the squeeze that they're experiencing. I give tools in the book to kind of try to reclaim some of that balance in your relationship. And, in particular, like actually generating your own data by tracking your time within the household. But for me, I said, look, I'm navigating like impossible constraints, and learning about that research, it gave me permission to kind of recognize that like it wasn't me, I wasn't the problem. And then I kind of looked at the structure of my life and I said, like, okay, yes, these things really are that hard, but I'm making it harder on myself because I don't have the support that I need. And I think when I moved to Philadelphia, traded my kind of 2.5 hour train commute for a 7-minute bike commute, and I actually, living in a cheaper city, I was able to afford some more support that was actually what I needed. So I joke, I upgraded from a husband to an au pair. So when I actually had those things, and then I realized like, oh, I was trying to do too much with too little. And it was because I had convinced myself that like I should be able to do it. I should be able to make it work.
It's perpetuating the myth. This is like what pisses me
correct.
off is there are women out there, you know who you are, who are perpetuating the myth that women can have it all at doing 100% of 100% of the things at 100% all of the time. And it's like, when do you sleep? Do you
Mm-hmm.
ever do anything for yourself? Also, how can I make your salary, please? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, or your husband's salary or whatever, however it
Or
is
the
that you're
family money
managing,
that you
or the
inherited.
family, right, exactly. So yeah, it's like talking about these things. That's what makes it feel better, is because if you look and compare, it's impossible not to compare yourself, but you're looking around at people who are acting like they are happy in all aspects of their life in the way that society says they should be happy, not the way that you actually want to be happy. Because like, just because society tells you you have to have this job and commute this way to make this much money, but then also you need to be making this type of meal with your negative hour of free time after your 2 hour commute, and also you need to make sure you look this way, which means you need to exercise with your negative 3 hours of free time, like,
Mm-hmm.
it goes on and on and on. So suffice it to say, I love the idea of changing your expectations, first of all, of like your awareness of what you're working within, the constraints you're working against, which are not the same for everyone, the world we live in, the things that are going on, and what you actually want to be doing with your time, and whether or not your time is being spent on things that make your life better and the people you care about better. Like, I just love that.
Well, thank you. And there's so much in there that I want to unpack, because I think that's exactly what you said, is like being this kind of like super corporate businesswoman or whatever this career is that we've imagined for ourselves, right? And being like an Instagrammable trad wife those are two separate full-time jobs that are simply incompatible with each other. And the people who are making it look like you can do this, like on social media, for example, are lying to you because that is their career. You are showing up with as much excellence in whatever your career is as they're bringing to the cupcakes and the, home cooked, nourishing, organic, whole food dinner, right? But it is actually impossible to do that at the same time as have your fully formed outside of the house career, and that is their livelihood, right? But they're presenting it as, oh, this is just like how I rolled out of bed, and this is just the domestic bliss that I stumble into in my spare time. But that's not what it is, and the time use data gives the lie to that. And we can talk more about that, but I think once you see the time use data, that is what I have studied and what I talk about, of how women's time just gets squeezed when we have young kids at home. And there's like literally like a mountain of childcare time and housework time. And then there's a valley. It like the mirror image of that is this valley of leisure time and work time, right? Then you're like, oh, okay, this period in my life is not the period where these things are going to add up. It's not the period where it's going to be realistic for me to spend 2 hours at the gym every day and, have a full face of makeup every day and have homemade baby food and hand decorated birthday cupcakes. Store bought is fine.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. I couldn't agree more with that.
And so one thing I want to unpack with you too is this idea of utility, because you mention it a lot in your book. Can you help us understand what that means and then how it relates?
Yes, that was exactly the other thing I wanted to pick up on in what Amy said, which is this idea that, like, right, what you want in your life is actually unique to you. And when you're comparing yourself to other people, you're missing that piece of it, right? That it's like, oh yeah, somebody else like has a career that's moving faster than you, or somebody else seems to have a better decorated, more smoothly running home. Well, that's because they're maximizing something else. So when economists kind of think about how people make decisions, we model them as maximizing something called utility. And it's kind of like your own personal profit function. But unlike a profit function, it's unique to each individual. Like, for a firm, every firm's accounting is going to be the same, right? But for an individual, like, only you know what brings you this sort of deep fulfillment, happiness, satisfaction, and joy over your lifetime, and how much weight you place on different categories. And so I always say you can't compare yourself to somebody else because they don't have the same utility function as you do, right? Your purpose in your life is to maximize utility. And we say utility, not happiness, because sometimes we kind of have to do something that feels bogus in the short term because it maximizes utility in the long run, right? Which is like break up with a boyfriend. We cry about it, but we know it's the right decision. Or, set a limit with our kids. They cry about it, but we know it's the right decision, right? So that's why we say utility, because it's sort of this like richer, deeper happiness, rather than the sort of momentary, fleeting joy. And once you recognize that your utility function is unique to you, just like what Amy said, it kind of frees you up from constantly looking over your shoulder to be like, well, why don't I have that or that? It's like, oh, because I am solving a different problem than she's solving, right? I'm solving a different problem, certainly, than he's solving, my male colleague who like might have that supportive partner who's, doing all those things and kind of easing his path. And so my outcomes are going to look different. And that's okay.
And it goes the other way too, of what brings you joy may not bring me joy. So why am I pretending like that brings me joy? Christina is extremely creative, like very artsy, very good at like, she paints, she like loves to like, she'll get furniture and refinish it and paint, like all these things. She loves to do that kind of stuff. I love how it looks in her house.
That's right.
I love how it looks when she does it. And I'm like, God, that's so cool. I hate doing that shit. I don't like doing it at all. I am not creative. I will pay Christina to make me art and then I get to proudly display it in my house. But it's like if I were to pretend like and she can when she can like prioritize her time to do something like
Right.
Do create a painting or to refinish a table or to make her own throw pillows, which she did all the time in California. And that brings her joy. She does it because she likes it. If I were to just sit here and be like, okay, I have an hour between like when I drop my kid off at school and like when I have my first meeting, I'm going to go make a throw pillow. Why would I force myself into doing that? I would rather be doing different things. But if for some reason I'm looking on social media and all the women
Right.
are making throw pillows, but also, doing all these other things to keep their household afloat that I don't see, then I feel pressure to make a throw pillow when I don't want to. Like,
Right, exactly. Like for Christina, it's leisure time, right? It's
yeah.
something that she actually enjoys doing. She gets direct utility from spending her time that way. Whereas I think this pressure to like insource all of these household tasks, it like, obscures the fact that like our time has value the same way that men's time has value, right? And I like don't know a lot of men who are doing like bespoke car repairs or like roof repairs, right? And like posting it on social media. And so there's not that same pressure of being like, oh, this is supposed to be like fun for you and how you're supposed to spend your time. And I think for men, like we recognize like, oh, we could like outsource this to an expert. Like for you, that expert might be Christina, right? And I really want women to like reframe that to say like, it's fine if baking, cookies like truly like brings you joy, like direct joy, not the joy of seeing like your kids enjoying it or whatever, but like truly you are enjoying how you spend your time, fine, do it. But if not, there are bakeries that have perfected their recipes over hundreds of years, and you can get them from them.
Yep. The other point that you made in your book, which I remember because I remember thinking about it before you addressed it in the book, is the argument, or I guess like the position that men traditionally handle like things like yard work and X, Y, and Z. Like there's like blue jobs and there's pink jobs, to
Mm-hmm.
like put it nicely. And the point, and I remember thinking about that because I do a lot of like housework, but like I've never mowed a lawn in my life. I've never cleaned the gutters. I've never done X, Y, and Z. And your point was absolutely like that is true. A lot of times men handle things that women don't around the house. The point you made was the amount of time that takes compared to the amount of time of childcare and house care and all these other things. It's not you can't compare those two
Yeah.
things. It's apples to oranges. Like you mow the lawn once a week for 1 hour.
Exactly. That's exactly all the tasks you named. It's like you can think of them. They're like monthly or maybe they're weekly, right?
Yeah.
The trash goes out once a week, whereas like the tasks that women tend to do are not just daily but are hourly, right?
Right.
And so often, when I present my data and I show like, oh, women are spending so much more time in home production than men are like, oh, but I do this, this, and that. And I'm like, yes, men do spend more time on those tasks in the data, right? And like exterior maintenance and repairs, they do spend more time on those tasks. And those tasks are a tiny
Right.
fraction of household time use. And so I think that's why sometimes it can feel to men, I think, like they're doing about half, right? And that is why I recommend like actually getting some of your own data in the household and tracking your time over a couple days, because I think they would be shocked to find out actually how little they are doing of the true universe of tasks that exist. Because there's things that like, it's visible to drop the kid off at daycare and you can split that 50-50. It's invisible that the kid needs seasonally appropriate clothes and then you had to find the right place to donate the old ones and drive them there, that the kid needed a packed lunch and 2 snacks, that the kid needed coordination with the daycare teacher and then coordination of pickup, right? And so when you actually kind of add those things up, the dad feels like, oh, right, world's best dad, I did the school drop off, right? And then you see this kind of mountain like beneath the iceberg, right? That's actually undergirding those things.
Totally. And you know what else I think about when you guys were talking about that is like, you can't mow the lawn with your kids. I mean, you probably could, but very rarely do men do that. So like all of the boy
it's
tasks,
probably fucking leisure time for them. That's their throw pillow. They get to get outside.
Whereas like mowing the lawn with their throw pillows.
Exactly. Whereas like, cooking, cleaning are all things that even like a Montessori program is like, your kids can help you. And so like, as a mom, I'm like, sure. Like, come on, Anna, come stir the soup, come polish the silver, which actually she did learn how to do. But it's like the girl tasks is like, suddenly my little girls are doing the girl tasks with me. Whereas like, they're not cleaning out the gutters with their dad.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why.
I thought the point you were going to make, Christina, which you didn't, but I agree with that too. I thought you were going to be like, oh, the kids aren't around when the dads are doing their thing, therefore I have to watch them. But when I'm doing my stuff, I still have to watch the kids too, is how it usually
Correct.
plays out. So it's
Also
like
that.
double duty. Can we count that time twice, Corinne? I
Yes,
was doing
yes.
dishes,
No.
but also I was like stopping my dishes to make sure that like Marie didn't eat something off the
No,
ground. And then
and
I put her back. And then I like,
and secondary childcare is like a huge thing that we see in the data, that's like even when like, mom is working out, she might be working out while like the baby is doing tummy
right.
time. I literally do this with my infant, right? I'm like, we're both doing tummy time. So like we see that again in the time use data. They actually track secondary childcare, and like a huge one I think is multitasking while at work. I think like guys go and they have like an 8-hour uninterrupted work day outside the house, right? And women are either home juggling, or even if they're in the office, like I'm on a Zoom call and I ordered groceries and I like confirmed the doctor's appointment and I scheduled the play date on my phone,
Yep.
I mean, my husband's a pilot, so like for sure he's definitely not multitasking in their plane. Could you imagine?
Which is why, by the way, I
so
think
bad.
that women, like so many women, go into like healthcare jobs, right? It's like nursing is 86% female. And I think part of what's appealing about that is that you actually are like, nope, sorry, I'm saving lives. Like I am unreachable, right? Like you actually get to like leave and go somewhere and work.
Or teaching. You can't
Yeah.
like check your phone while you're
Mm-hmm.
teaching. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're just there. Yeah. Corinne, I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier, which is the idea of identifying, like looking at your own utility and thinking about what fills your cup and how to make yourself happy, etc. Um, how does one go about doing that, evaluating their life? Like, maybe it's easy, I can easily say like I'm not creative, so I don't want to make throw pillows. But more deeply than that, how do you actually suggest someone goes about like sort of evaluating their life in that way?
Yeah. So the first place that I like to start, because so often people tell me, like, oh, I love my job. Like, my job is like, I really love my job. Okay. And then I ask people to picture a world where they're independently wealthy, where like money is no object, no concern, right? And then I say, how would you spend your time? What would your days look like if you were independently wealthy? And very few people say like, well, I would make sure to finish up those PowerPoint presentations, right? Even people who do really love their jobs, like I really do like teaching, but they're like, yeah, I would do that like maybe with like 10% of my time, but I wouldn't do it with like 50% of my time, right?
Right.
And so picturing this, it's what economists call your unconstrained maximum. Like when you're trying to like solve this problem of maximizing your utility, we have the constraints of like, I actually need to make money to like buy food and like housing, right? But it clarifies, what do I actually value? And so if you picture a reality where like you have like fancy cars and fancy vacations and the latest fashion, like money might actually be pretty important in your utility function. And that might be a reason to kind of invest more of your time into your career to like get those financial outcomes. But if you're picturing like, I would really spend time with my loved ones, I would be really present with my kids, and I wouldn't like tell them no to like being able to do something with them, right? Or if you're picturing like I would really pursue my artistic hobbies, right? That is surfacing for you that there's a really stark trade-off between time and money in your utility function. That the more that you put into your job, which we've been kind of conditioned to accept as our purposes in life, we've been told like lean in, that's girl power, right? Well, actually the more time I put in there, the less time I have for the things that I really value. So I like to start there. And then once you kind of have that picture, then crystallize it into like naming the things that you value, the things that bring you this deep contentment and joy and fulfillment, that if you were 85 years old sitting on a porch in a rocking chair, you would look back on and say like, that was a life well lived. And if you find yourself naming things that are a means to an end, if you find yourself saying, well, it brings me utility to have a good job to make money, I want you to ask why. I want you to say what you actually value. Is it, hey, I need to be able to afford to live in a safe neighborhood close to my job? Is it, I need to be able to afford to, provide the things I want for my kids and, be able to pay for, this type of schooling or whatever, right? Name the things that are the actual end themselves that bring you that utility and fulfillment. And then that helps you start to figure out how to get more of those things in a world that does have constraints, that does have the reality that there are trade-offs between some of these things.
I'm just thinking in my head, what would I do with my time if I didn't
That's
have to work?
exactly what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh,
If
I
money.
would cook.
And that's so revealing because, like, if Christina, if you say, like, I would cook and I would craft, and if Amy is like, I would pay people to do those things, that's so revealing that, like, those are two different utility functions, right?
Or that we should form a commune and just live together.
Yes, yes, yes.
Christina will cook everything. She'll also do the garden, although I'm dabbling these days. I made some
We could do it
tomatoes.
together.
I made some tomatoes. I grew some tomatoes. No, totally. And I think so. I already think about retirement, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to be really purposeful about how I spend my time, because if I don't have things to do, or I don't have a plan, or I don't have,
Yeah.
something I'm working towards, I feel very untethered and weird. And then I tend to just like sink into the couch and do nothing, and then I feel bad about myself. And it's like, it just keeps going. So
Unstructured time is really hard.
it's
And
hard.
like, that's why I'm not prescribing that people quit their jobs. What I'm prescribing is that people put their jobs into perspective, because we've been
Totally.
sold this like lean in myth again, that our career is our purpose. And that serves capitalism, that serves your boss, that doesn't actually serve you. Your purpose in life is to get this joy and fulfillment. And so if we look at our jobs instead as a tool to turn our time into money, it makes us then really ask about like this balance of trade between us and our jobs, and especially how it evolves over our lifetime, to say, look, a career accomplishment, a career gold star is not an end in itself for me. That is only like something that I'm going to, get utility from if it gives me more money or if it gives me more time. Like, the crucial thing about trying to chase these career achievements is to get a better time to money conversion rate. And I see so many jobs where like that's not the case. I was really lucky that in my job as like a tenured professor, that actually is the case. So like I had the like lean in to the assistant professor tenure track, publisher parish, right? But once I became tenured, I did have a lot more flexibility. I could pick and choose my projects, and I got a big pay
Mm-hmm.
raise, right? But then I see other people where they're like, "Oh, I'm leaning into my like corporate law job," where, as my one friend told me, the prize for the pie eating contest is more pie. You can
Right.
make partner, and like, yeah, you do get a raise, but you have to still keep working the crazy hours. And so I think if we are able to take a step back and actually see our career as not an end in itself, then it lets us more critically evaluate whether it is serving our interests over the arc of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Which doesn't mean, I want to call out, which doesn't mean like do a shit job at your job or like phone it in. It doesn't mean like, oh, I don't
Quiet
care
quitting,
about my
whatever. Yeah.
career. Yeah, exactly, quiet quitting. It means evaluate what you're putting into this job, what it's doing for you, what it's giving you, what it allows you, what it stops you from doing, and sort of like make decisions based on that, right?
Yeah, and when might be the right time, like the most crucial periods to do that lean in thing and right try to hit those milestones. And when are some periods where you need to have stronger boundaries and remember that your career doesn't define you, and ask yourself when you're asked to do something extra, like, moderate a panel or plan the retreat or whatever, to say, is this actually going to contribute to me making more money in the future, right? Is this actually going to move my career along? If not, does it bring me direct utility in that it's something I would rather do than the other possible use of that time? And if not, reclassify that as volunteer work and ask yourself if you really need to volunteer for your employer.
It's such a good point because, like, and you mentioned this in your book, you talk about how, like, all women, no matter their choice of if they're going to have kids or not, are going to face obstacles at work in getting a promotion. So it's almost like,
Mhm.
is organizing this retreat going to help me get that promotion? Or am I still going to face like this glass
Yeah.
ceiling at work, because I might not want to have kids, but they're going to treat me as if I might.
Yeah, that's what the data shows, which is really horrifying. And that's why, again, like I think it's freeing for women to realize like you truly cannot overcome these structural problems enough. You cannot like lean in enough for people to treat you like a man. So I give you permission to get what you need from your job, however works for you, right? Because that's what the data shows, is that even these women who like were the women who were like totally career focused, didn't have kids, they still faced this discrimination in the labor market.
But then once they were past childbearing years, then
Yeah.
women started getting promoted more because employers were like, "Oh, sweet, she's locked in. She has no
She's
distractions
not
now.
going
She's
to
not
have
going to leave
kids.
us." Yeah.
Exactly. And that was what, in this paper, which is by this economist I love named Marianne Bronson, that's what kind of was the smoking gun, that it was discrimination in the first place. It wasn't ever that they were actually less productive or less good, because once they were past that age of not having kids, they got promoted at the same rate.
That's so wild.
It's it's sick.
That's so wild. But you know what also I think about, Corinne, is like, so I worked for a while in Germany, and in Germany, we would actually have moms working part-time in the agency. So I worked for a communications agency there. I was a senior communications consultant, and there were moms working part-time who were also senior communications consultant. And I felt so split as a woman. At one side, I was like, God, that's so cool. Like, good for them. Like, they can come in, they can still play this role. Like, there's an opportunity for them to continue to show up but still be a mom. But then the other side of me was like, well, this is really effed, because they're making the same amount of money as me. I have way more
Mm.
responsibility, and they have the same title. And
Mm-hmm.
like I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, how much of this is internalized in women as well. So it's not just like men pushing women down, but also like women pushing women down, because we feel like, we're trying to have it all and we can't have it all either. And so they shouldn't, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I see that also, like, in women who like had to live through this generation where they had to like give up so much, and they had to like prove that they were exactly like a man to kind of be equals in the workplace, and then they can kind of look down on our generation to be like, oh, well, why are you doing this and that and not taking this as seriously? One of the pieces of data that I want to share that is so important about that is that we are not trying to juggle the same things that they were juggling, because moms today spend twice as much time with our kids as moms a generation ago. Every parent that's listening probably can recognize, right, the like interminable bedtime routine that is like, you process the day's highs and lows, you like, snuggle, you read stories, all that. I grew up in the 80s, so my bedtime routine was go to bed. And that's not the only thing that's changed, right? Pumping at work, that is new, okay? Moms a generation ago, if they breastfed at all, they did not continue when they went back to work. Baby wearing, being sitting on the floor with our toddlers, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework with our grade schoolers, driving to travel sports. I don't know if that's in your future, but these things did not exist. And it is because of our greater understanding of child development, of, what that our time is actually crucial in kind of creating these little people and making sure they're successful in the future. So I think, and it's a choice I'm actively making as somebody who's like breastfeeding right now and having to like plan when I travel for work, like, how am I going to get all that milk home, right? It's a beautiful affirmative choice to give our children something different, to give our children what they need. And it's tremendously costly in terms of our time. So I think that data point, like when I tell people that, it sometimes is such a like weight off their shoulders, because they felt like, okay, wait, the women before me did this. Like, why can't I do it? And it's like, no, we are actually playing a different game. And that means that, we need to be ruthless in like making choices about like what's in and what's out. And so, I tell women, like, it's okay to say, like, I want there to be home cooked food, but it means it's going to be like shortcuts, and it's not going to be the most beautifully like aesthetic thing in the world, right? And yeah, so I think going back to Christina's point, I think that it's like we're all so conditioned to think that this should work and that women should be making it work, right, at the cost of ourselves. And so it's like, when society, if we see society actually making space for like women having multiple priorities, it's like, oh, wait, is that okay? Can she do that? Right. But the reality is, like, that is what we actually need. We actually need to make space and time for caregiving labor. And it's a really short period in a worker's total working life. The data shows this kind of mountain that lasts like, 5 years, depending on how many kids you have, right? And so if you are in a long-term relationship with your employer, then allowing some of these kind of boundaries in place for that short period, I think you're going to kind of get the return on that when you're able to kind of retain somebody over their entire working life. And I think all too often there's a lot more like exit ramps from careers than there are entry ramps. And I think that's a huge barrier, like in the economy and we're losing out. We're like missing out on like talent and innovation when like we sideline women who have like tremendous human capital. Where did we, not you, where did we as a society go wrong that there was kind of no way to check back in, when the squeeze, which is what I call that mountain of time, when that abated?
What I want to move into though from this is like trying to figure all this out. It leads us to all being, we're all burnt out in some capacity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, there's this quote from your book that I want to read. It says, letting yourself become worn down into a pile of resentment and exhaustion in the name of your family is not actually good parenting. Let us discuss.
And begin.
Yes. So I say that from, that's like a lesson hard one for me, because I told you about where I started and how things just weren't adding up for me. And it really took a shove for me to decide to like get divorced and to move. And that was when it came down to like what I thought was best for my son, when it came down to parenting. And afterwards, I felt this deep grief. Once I saw how much easier things were and how much better resourced I was and that I could actually be happy again, I felt grief that I hadn't thought that I deserved to make those changes just for me. And I saw that I was worried, like it was going to be so hard. Like I wasn't going to have the pair of hands I needed to take care of my son, right? A single parenting didn't sound like it was going to be, fun or easy for me. But I saw how much my son just blossomed and thrived because I was able to be the kind of parent that he needed. I was his home base, right? And as long as he had me and I was able to sit on the floor with him and connect and let my shoulders down because I hadn't just gotten off a 2.5 hour train ride where I was pumping in the Amtrak bathroom. And so I kind of learned that lesson that I think as women, we obsess over and juggle and, bend and twist and contort to try to make everything add up for everybody else in our households. And we forget that we are a member of the household. And so if something is not working for us, it is not working for the family. It is not working for the household, and it needs to change.
Mm-hmm. You talk about paying yourself first to pull back to
In
like the
time, yeah.
idea of, in time. So talk about what that means. Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So paying yourself first is this like personal finance adage that's like, we tend to make our long-term goals our lowest priority. So we kind of like spend and we pay everybody else. And then like if we have money left over, we save, right? And so what they say is like, instead you should like take your money out of your checking account, move it into your savings account first. So that money is not available for other things because like your savings priorities, like they need to come first, right? Or repaying debt, if that's a priority, that needs to come first. And I recommend people do the same thing with their time because I think the reality is that we do end up with some kind of leisure time. We're not actually like working or caring for our kids or sleeping every single minute of the day, but we're often so depleted by the time it comes around. It's like these little time crumbles. And so we end up like spending them like scrolling on our phone, right? And so if instead we actually like treat taking care of ourselves leisure, and I mean that with leisure, I don't mean put on a face mask. I mean like do the thing that replenishes you. If that's see a friend, if that's go to yoga, right? If that's go for a run, if we actually put that first and kind of block that time out, make ourselves, like out of office, both metaphorically and literally, like, unavailable for meetings, also unavailable for taking care of the kids during that time, right? We can make sure that we get that high quality time where like we're doing the thing that actually replenishes us and actually brings us joy. And then the other things will kind of fill in around it. Other things will adjust, right? You know, your husband will have to figure out cooking dinner or where to order from that night, right? If you are gone, right? Even your work, you'll figure out how to get that project done the way we suddenly realize like, oh, I can do this when we have a deadline. And you're like, oh, that only took me 20 minutes and I'd been procrastinating for 3 hours, right? Like you will get that done. And you will get that time that actually nourishes and replenishes you. So This was one of my favorite like quotes from somebody who was an early reader of my book. And she said this was the big step that she took. She's like, I started paying myself first with time because I used to, wait to see if I had time after I got all of the housework done on the weekends before I would like go to the gym. And then I would often like run out of time. And what I found is that if I went for the walk or went to the gym first, I could still get everything done in a shorter period of time now that I had a deadline. But also, my partner was home to help me by then because it turned out he'd been paying himself first with leisure time the whole time.
Right. And I think another benefit of doing that is I feel like sometimes we as women or moms want to do it ourselves because like we can just do it faster and better. Like it would take longer for me to explain how to do this thing than to just do it myself. So that the practice of paying yourself first also sort of forces the hand of like, then dad will figure it out, or like the nanny will figure it out, or whoever, grandma will figure it out. Of like, sure, the baby always wants mom because I'm always the one there. So the only way to fix that is to expose the baby to more people who care for her, and then she'll be more comfortable with them. And then it's like a self-perpetuate. What's that phrase?
10,000%. Like we're our own worst enemy sometimes because it's like we say like, I need help, I can't do this all myself, but then we insist on doing it all ourselves, right? And so I think sometimes, we need to like remove ourselves from the equation and be like, and it will be okay. And I think when you do that, like when you really remove yourself from the equation, hopefully it means that you can also kind of free yourself from the mental load and the invisible tasks that support the physical care. Because if like you are assigning somebody to do dinner or assigning somebody for childcare, but you're still actually available, right? Then you're really still holding on to that task, right? And it's not until you're like, I will be gone, you need to figure this out, right? That you're able to actually shift that whole item onto someone else's plate.
Yep.
It's boundary setting, which I think women in general really struggle with. Like, parent or not, holding a boundary and then like not just setting it. Setting boundaries is really easy, but then holding a boundary is like so hard. So
and you're
hard.
letting go of some things too. I think it's like you're gaining a lot. You're gaining time to do what you want to do. You're gaining whatever, all of these other things. You're also, I think, letting go of like maybe dad didn't feed them the meal that you would have. Maybe like someone didn't clean something the way you would have. That's okay. Like there are things that are going to be deal breakers. Like you can't feed them pizza every single meal for 7 days in a row, probably. Like you need to actually clean the thing that needs to be cleaned. But just because it's not the way you would have done it doesn't mean it's not like a totally acceptable way to do it. And what did you gain by letting that go? It's so much more than having the perfect meal or what you wanted for the meal or whatever.
100%. And I think it's setting boundaries with yourself. And that's why I like always start with like what the time use data says, so that women can understand that like this doesn't add up. And it means like to make it add up, we need to have like hard conversations with our partners. We need to like, renegotiate our deal at work, but we also need to have hard conversations with ourselves to say like, where am I going to draw the line? What am I going to pass off? What am I going to outsource? And what am I going to throw out? I joke about throwing out my houseplants because like I do not have a green thumb, and like they're always dead, right? And it's like I just sort of had to realize like this doesn't add up, and it's okay to just be like, you know what? Maybe in like 5-10 years when the kids are older, maybe then I'm going to have houseplants. I got like the little twinge of jealousy when you said you had tomatoes. I was like, I want tomatoes. I will have tomatoes one day. Okay. Right now is not the moment. And I need to be able to like have that talk with myself to be like, no, this is not realistic. This doesn't add up. You got to Marie Kondo your time. If it doesn't spark joy, we're throwing it out.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So you are now a mom of 2. Your life is dramatically different than when the book opens, the scene where the book opens. So tell us like how's your life now? What are you doing? Like
yes, and I don't want to present a false reality at all because it's still really hard. And so what I for those of you who haven't read the book, but I hope you will, I divorced my husband and I am now married to a woman. And, because I also wanted a second kid and I was starting to go through IVF to freeze embryos, we have this like great like love story of like 4 months in needing to figure out like, okay, is the sperm donor going to look like you? So we now have that baby that we, started, that we popped in the freezer way too early in our relationship because I was like, the clock is ticking. So there's a lot of joy, and like I do think it's a beautiful story that had like a really happy ending. And like right now I'm going on a book tour, and she just started a new like in-person job that has like a 45-minute commute if we're lucky with the traffic. And we are like, oh my God, how does this add up? Like, who takes the kid to soccer? So it still is that hard, but the difference is like, I think that for me, the biggest difference has been, and you can find this for yourself, like it doesn't have to be a woman, you can find this in a man. It's like having somebody who like cares about the same things that I care about, so that it's not like a management task of like, oh, I have to manage you taking care of the house or making sure that everybody gets fed, or I have to manage you, making sure that our kids have activities. It's like actually shared, because she's going to say like, oh, I noticed that, kiddo one needs some like additional help with soccer. I'm going to look up to see if there's like an extra clinic we can take him to. Or like, I noticed that kiddo two like needs more things for like, when the babysitter starts taking care of her. So I'm going to order those things on Amazon, right? It's actually shared work versus it being like, oh, I have like a low level employee or intern really who's kind of bad at their job. Yeah. And that's why I warn, like, I'm telling like young women who are listening who like haven't gotten married yet, right? Like I say like, interview for co-CEO of the household. Don't interview for like the person that you like going to the movies with. That's the wrong position. Yeah, that's the wrong position that you're hiring for, right? Like you need the co-CEO of the household.
I asked one of my good friends, she's not in a very happy marriage. And I asked her one time, like, why'd you marry him? And she's like, because I was young and he was hot. And I'm like, yes, that's like, I relate to that. Like,
yes.
That's not my reason for marrying my husband, but like that was her answer right away. And I was like, well, that says a lot.
And I write about that in the book. I say like love is the epsilon, which is the economics term for like the error term, the noise, the chaos, right? Because like, yes, evolution is telling us to look for like the hot, strong guy who like, makes us feel cared for. And like, it's not telling us that like we actually need the person who like knows his way around like, wayfair.com and like knows like actually like what children need to eat to like be well nourished, right? And like knows how to Google something or like, look up baby sleep and like read a book about it instead of like it being all on us. And if you're the only one who cares, you're also going to be the only one doing the work.
Yeah. Very well.
Something that you wish you knew about parenting before you started this whole journey?
I definitely, this piece of like that we do spend more time, now than we used to. And so one of the things I say that shocks people coming from me, who's an economist, and I tend to be very evidence-based. I joke that like being a lesbian is an evidence-based decision. But when it comes to parenting, one of the things I say is like, just because something is evidence-based, just because there is some kind of marginal return to doing something, it doesn't actually mean that you need to do that. There's still a cost-benefit analysis. And so even if you can find data, for example, that says, breastfeeding is slightly better, the data is actually not that good, but it's slightly better for my kid. If this is negatively impacting your mental health, if you're not able to do it without exclusively pumping, if it's not working for you, then it's actually still okay to say no, because society makes these trade-offs with our kids all the time. Society lets us use pesticides that cause infant mortality and air pollution that decreases test scores, right? But only you are supposed to like give up everything if it means there's any infinitesimal improvement to any of your kids' outcomes, right? You don't know. You cannot write the future for your kids. Statistics are averages. There is no one-to-one correlation. If you do this thing, they're going to get into Harvard. So take a page from understanding the time you stay to understanding how much things just don't add up and let some things go.
Let it go.
I love that. We always end our episodes singing. Why is that? This time it wasn't me.
Corinne, I want to end with, where can people find you and where can they find the book?
So the book is available wherever you get your books. So if you like getting them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, or your local indie bookstore, it is all of those places. I have a Substack, corinnelow.substack.com, Corinne Low PhD on Instagram, and I have a website where you can find my book events, and I hope maybe I'll get to see some people in person.
I will be stalking you to see if I can come.
Thank you so much for giving up your time, which after this conversation, we understand like you chose to spend your time with us, and that means the world to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. It was such a pleasure.
If you found something helpful, insightful, or just plain reassuring in this episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you have a moment, leaving a quick review helps more parents find us.
We're also always looking for great guests, so if you know someone or that someone is you, please reach out. You can find us at whatiwishiknew_ or whatiwishiknew.life.
Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay sane, stay calm, or at least fake it until bedtime.